There must be some mistake. Men like him do not sit in 2A. The words arrived before anything else, before the door had fully closed, before the last carry-on had been lifted into the overhead bin, before the soft cabin music had a chance to do what cabin music is designed to do, make everyone feel equally welcome, equally comfortable, equally at home. Pamela Voss did not shout it. She did not need to. She said it the way someone reads a departure board, flatly, as though reporting what was already true, what had always been true, what anyone with eyes and sense would obviously agree with. She was seated diagonally across from seat 2A in the first-class cabin of Northstar Airways Flight 614, Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. Her handbag, cream leather monogrammed, rested on the seat beside her. Her posture was the kind that develops over decades of being accommodated. The man in seat 2A looked up from the document in his lap. He did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He did not reach for his boarding pass or launch into an explanation. He simply looked at her for one moment, calm, still measuring, and then returned to his reading. That stillness was the first sign that this situation was not what it appeared to be. Let us step back from that cabin for just a moment. Because what Pamela Voss does not know, what none of them know, not Diana Price standing in the galley with her tablet pressed to her chest, not Robert Hastings waiting near the jet bridge, not the security officers, not yet called, not the passengers already shifting uncomfortably in their seats, is that in exactly 22 minutes the chief executive officer of Northstar Airways is going to walk through that aircraft door. She is going to come without an entourage, without a prepared statement, without a publicist or a press secretary or an advance team clearing the path. She is going to come because of one phone call from one woman named Denise Howell, who is going to hear something in a conference room that will make her hands shake and her voice go quiet. And when that CEO walks into this cabin and sees the man in seat 2A, still seated, still calm, still holding the document he was reading when this all began, she is going to stop everything. The flight, the crew, the carefully constructed narrative that has been building for the last 22 minutes. She is going to stop all of it. But first, the people in this cabin are going to make a series of choices, one after another, each one feeling in the moment like the safe choice, the reasonable choice, the choice that protects the schedule and the airline and the comfort of the right kind of passenger. And every single one of those choices is going to be remembered. Because the man in seat 2A is not who they think is. And the story that is about to unfold, right here in first class on a Tuesday morning, is going to change Northstar Airways forever. Now let us go back to the beginning. But before we go any further, if you have ever been told you do not belong somewhere you already paid for, somewhere you already earned, somewhere you walked into with every right to be there, and still felt the weight of someone else deciding you did not fit, this story is for you. Drop your city in the comments right now. Tell us where you are watching from, because stories like this one do not belong to one person or one airplane or one Tuesday morning. They belong to every person who has ever had to sit very still and very straight while someone else decided whether they were allowed to stay. If that has ever been you, if you have ever felt it, hit subscribe and give this video a like, because we are just getting started. Now let us go back to seat 2A, because what happens next changes everything. His name is Marcus Ellison. He is 61 years old. His hair is silver and close cropped, trimmed with the kind of precision that comes not from vanity, but from discipline. The habit of a man who has spent 4 decades in rooms where first impressions are studied and catalogued before a single word is spoken. His navy blazer is clean. It is not new. The fabric has been pressed carefully and the buttons are all intact, but anyone who knows clothes would notice the slight softening at the elbows, the way the lining along the collar has been turned, once repaired, quietly, without fanfare. His trousers are charcoal. His shoes are black Oxford recently polished, but worn at the heels in the particular way that shoes wear when a man walks, not performs, his life. The briefcase beside his feet tells its own story. Brown leather, once rich, now faded to a warm amber at the corners. The handle has been reinforced with a thin strip of black tape on the left side, where the stitching finally gave way 2 years ago, during a particularly brutal week of back-to-back field investigations. The body of the case is scratched, not carelessly, purposefully the way a tool gets scratched when it is used. He carries it the way some men carry a weapon, not to threaten anyone but because it has over the years proven itself necessary. He looks to the casual observer like a man who works hard and travels moderately and perhaps got a favorable seat assignment today through some error of the booking system. He looks like a man who should be grateful for the upgrade. This is, of course, exactly what he intended. What the cabin does not know. What Pamela Voss does not know, what Diana Price does not know, what Robert Hastings waiting near the jet bridge does not know, is this. Marcus Ellison is a federal civil rights investigator. Specifically, he is a former senior trial attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, where he spent 19 years building and litigating some of the most consequential discrimination cases in the country's transportation sector. He led the team that uncovered a decade-long pattern of discriminatory upgrade denials at a major carrier in 2009. He was the lead investigator in a 2014 case that resulted in the largest passenger discrimination settlement in aviation history at that time. He has testified before Senate subcommittees. He has been quoted in federal court decisions. His name appears in the footnotes of policy documents that airline executives read and do not enjoy reading. He left the Department of Justice 6 years ago to establish his own independent investigations practice. He is retained by boards, by regulators, by insurance underwriters, and occasionally, quietly, confidentially, by airlines themselves when they suspect that something is wrong inside their operations, but do not trust their own people to find it. 6 weeks ago, Northstar Airways retained him. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Because 31 passenger complaints had accumulated in their system over the past 3 years. Complaints that individually could each be explained away as miscommunication or operator error, or the inevitable friction of moving millions of people through airports at speed. But together, read in sequence, they form something that could not be explained away. A pattern. The same pattern recurring across different routes, different crew members, different airports, always with the same essential geometry. A black or brown passenger, a confirmed seat in a premium cabin, and a white passenger nearby who decided, without authority, without evidence, without anything except certainty, that there had been a mistake. The board retained Marcus on the condition that the review be conducted confidentially. Marcus agreed to that condition. He set one of his own he would conduct the review the way all meaningful investigations are conducted, from inside the experience. He would board flights without announcement. He would sit in the seats that had been reported. He would see what the passengers saw from where the passengers sat. Today was supposed to be routine. Seat 2A confirmed. First class paid for by the investigation's retainer. A 4-hour flight to Los Angeles, where he was scheduled to meet with Northstar's outside compliance auditor and review the first batch of physical complaint files. He had not expected to become part of the evidence. He is not, if he is honest with himself, entirely surprised. The document on his lap is a printed summary of complaint file number 14. It describes a black cardiologist traveling alone first class Atlanta to Boston 18 months ago. The doctor presented his boarding pass. It was valid. His seat was confirmed. A female passenger nearby suggested to the flight attendant that the seat assignment was probably an error. The flight attendant asked the doctor to wait while she resolved the confusion. The doctor waited for 11 minutes while the passenger who had raised the objection was offered a glass of champagne. The doctor was then told that there had been a system issue and that he would need to be reseated in business class with a travel voucher. The doctor refused. He documented the incident. He filed a complaint. The complaint was reclassified internally as passenger dissatisfaction, seating preference conflict. It was never investigated. Marcus has been reading this file for the last 40 minutes. He has read it 3 times. Each time he reaches the same line, passenger dissatisfaction, seating preference conflict, and feels something settle in his chest that is not quite anger and not quite grief, but lives in the space between them. The place where a person arrives after years of watching institutions protect themselves by renaming what they do. He looks up from the file now. The soft music is playing above the cabin. Ice has settled in a champagne glass somewhere to his left. Outside the window, baggage carts move beneath the gray morning sky of Washington. And across the aisle, Pamela Voss is watching him the way a person watches something that has been placed incorrectly, not with hostility precisely, but with the firm, patient expectation that someone will come along shortly and put it right. Diana Price steps out of the galley tablet pressed to her chest. She stops beside seat 2A, and Marcus Ellison closes his file, folds his hands on top of it, and waits. "Your boarding pass, please." Diana Price says it pleasantly. Everything about Diana Price is pleasant in this particular way. The smile that is positioned correctly on her face, the tilt of her head that suggests attentiveness, the voice pitched at the frequency of professional courtesy. She has been a senior flight attendant for Northstar Airways for 14 years. She knows how to manage a cabin. She knows how to manage passengers. What she does not always know, what she has not always been required to examine, is who she chooses to manage and why. Marcus reaches into his jacket pocket and produces the boarding pass. He holds it out to her. She takes it. She studies the screen. Her eyes move from the seat number to his face, then back to the seat number, then back to his face. The movement is small, a flicker barely perceptible, but Marcus sees it. He has been watching for exactly that movement for 38 years, in courtrooms and conference rooms, and airport check-in lines and hotel lobbies, and every other space where a man who looks like him has been required to prove one more time that he belongs where he has already arrived. The boarding pass is clear. It has always been clear. Northstar Airways Flight 614, Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, first class, seat 2A, passenger M. Ellison. Diana does not hand it back. Behind her, 2 rows back, a man in 2B has watched this entire exchange without moving. His name is Frank Okafor, 72 years old. He has a broad frame that has carried its age with something like dignity, the posture of a man who spent 26 years in the Marine Corps and never entirely left the Corps behind. His hair is white and close-cropped. His hands rest flat on his knees. He watches Diana the way he once watched new recruits, not with judgment, but with the particular attention of a person who has learned that small things reveal large truths. 3 rows behind Frank in 3C, Sophia Reyes sits with her phone face down on her tray table. Sophia is 28 years old, a travel and transportation journalist whose work has appeared in 4 national publications. She noticed the moment Diana stopped at 2A. She noticed which seat Diana stopped at. She noticed which passenger Diana stopped at. She has not reached for her phone yet. She is waiting the way a journalist waits to see whether this becomes something or resolves into nothing. And across the aisle from Marcus in the window seat to his right, Pamela Voss leans forward slightly and addresses Diana with the calm authority of a woman who has never in her life been told to wait. "I requested this seating section weeks ago," Pamela says. "My husband and I fly this route every month. We are Northstar Platinum members." Diana glances at her. "Mrs. Voss, I understand. We are looking into the arrangement." "There is nothing to look into," Pamela says. "He is in the wrong seat." She says it with the absolute confidence of someone who has never considered the possibility of being wrong about this particular type of thing. Not cruelty precisely, something that functions like certainty, the kind that arrives fully formed and does not require evidence. Marcus turns a page in the document on his lap. He does not look up. This provokes Pamela more than any response he could have given. Her husband, Derek Voss, 58, sits beside her in 2C. He has the build of a man who was once athletic and is now expensive, well-tailored, well-maintained, the kind of tan that comes from ski vacations rather than outdoor labor. He stares at his phone. He has been staring at his phone since they boarded. He is doing what Derek Voss has learned to do over decades of marriage to Pamela. He is making himself small enough to not be required to participate. Diana turns back to Marcus. Her pleasant smile has not moved, but something behind it has shifted. A decision being made, the weight of competing pressures settling onto one side of the scale. "Sir, I am going to need you to cooperate with our seating review." Marcus looks up now. His voice is even and unhurried, the voice of a man who has cross-examined federal officials and does not find this interaction more intimidating than those. I am cooperating, Marcus says. I am sitting in my seat. There may have been a system issue with the assignment. May there have been, Marcus says, or has a passenger suggested there was? Diana's smile does not waver, but her fingers tighten on the tablet. In 3C, Sophia Reyes slowly, deliberately picks up her phone. She holds it at a natural angle, the way a person holds a phone when they are reading something. She is not reading anything. 3 rows further back in 5B, Trevor Oakes, 34 white, the kind of man who uses the word actually a great deal in conversations, glances from Marcus to Pamela to Marcus again. A half smile crosses his face. It is the expression of a man who has not yet decided what he thinks, but has decided which side of this he finds more familiar. Frank Okafor in 2B has not moved. His hands are still flat on his knees. His eyes have not left Diana Price. The boarding pass appears to be printed clearly, Frank says. Not loudly, not dramatically. The way a person states a fact that they expect to land. Diana turns to him with professional smoothness. Sir, please allow us to handle this. You are handling it, Frank says. That is the concern. Diana does not respond to that. She looks back at Marcus, and Marcus looks back at her, and between them the air holds something that is not quite a standoff, but is the shape of one. The particular stillness that arrives when two people understand exactly what is happening, and only one of them is willing to say so directly. Marcus reaches down beside his seat, not into the briefcase, just to the side of it, his hand resting on the worn leather. A quiet movement, a man keeping something close. Pamela Voss watches this and does not like it. Pamela Voss stands up. She does not need to stand. She is already visible, already heard, already very much present in this cabin. She stands because standing changes the geometry of a space. It transforms a complaint into a declaration, a preference into a position. She smooths the front of her jacket. It is an unconscious gesture the kind a person makes when they are preparing to be right. I would like to speak to whoever is in charge of this section, she says to Diana, not unkindly. The way a person requests the manager of a restaurant. Not angry, just certain that escalation will resolve things in their favor. Mrs. Voss. I am handling... You have been reviewing his boarding pass for 4 minutes, Pamela says. That suggests the matter is not resolved. I would like someone with authority to address it. The sentence is constructed so carefully. Someone with authority. As if Diana's authority, real professional 14 years of it, does not count in this moment. As if the someone Pamela is requesting is someone who will agree with her. Diana straightens. There is a particular discomfort that comes with being caught between two sources of pressure, and that discomfort is beginning to show at the edges of Diana's professional composure. People who know where they belong do not need to be verified 3 times, Pamela says, and though she addresses Diana, the sentence is aimed elsewhere. It lands in the cabin like something dropped. A woman in 4A, white mid-50s on her way to a conference, looks up from her reading and then very deliberately looks back down. The deliberateness is its own kind of choice. Derek Voss shifts in his seat. His jaw moves. He does not speak. Marcus still has not reacted. He is reading, or performing the act of reading in a way that is, under the circumstances, more powerful than any visible response could be, because it refuses to accept the premise that he needs to defend himself, that Pamela's opinion of his presence requires acknowledgement that this moment belongs to her. Pamela looks at the stillness, and it troubles her in a way she does not fully understand. Sir, Diana says, turning back to Marcus, I need you to cooperate with the crew. I am cooperating with the crew, Marcus says. I have provided my boarding pass. I have answered your questions. I am seated in my confirmed seat. What specific instruction have I refused? Diana opens her mouth, closes it. In 3C, Sophia has been filming for 40 seconds. She holds the phone at an angle that looks casual, that looks like a person scrolling idly, but the lens is pointed directly at seat 2A and the woman standing in the aisle. She is a journalist. She knows how to document something without announcing that she is documenting it. She knows how to be invisible inside a moment that does not belong to her. But what she is watching does not stay invisible much longer. Ma'am? Diana notices the phone. Filming crew members is not permitted under airline policy. Sophia's voice is pleasant and direct. I am filming what is happening inside a shared cabin. As a passenger and a journalist, that is permitted. Journalism does not supersede airline. I will have my editor's legal team send you the relevant statute if you would like, Sophia says. But I am not putting the phone down. The exchange takes less than 15 seconds. Its effect on the cabin takes considerably longer to settle. Frank Okafor stands. He does it the way older men stand when they have made a decision, slowly, with deliberate weight, without drama. He is not performing indignation. He is simply refusing to sit while something wrong happens in his immediate vicinity. He has lived long enough to know that the moment you decide it is not your business is usually the moment your silence becomes part of the problem. This man has a valid boarding pass, Frank says. His voice carries the particular authority of someone who has given orders and taken orders and learned the difference. I watched him show it. His seat is confirmed. You have acknowledged that. What exactly are we still reviewing? Diana, with patient firmness, Sir, please allow us to resolve this without passenger interference. Passenger interference. Frank repeats the phrase as if examining it for structural integrity and finding it lacking. I am a passenger in 2B. I am witnessing my neighbor being asked to justify a seat that is clearly his. That is not interference. That is testimony. Pamela from the aisle turns to address the cabin more broadly now. She does it with the confidence of a woman who has rarely spoken into a room and not been agreed with. I am not asking for anything unreasonable, she says. I am simply pointing out that there appears to be a seating discrepancy, and I would like it resolved professionally. Surely that is not controversial. Silence. Then a voice from behind her. Quiet, unhurried, the voice of a woman who has been listening carefully. It is when there is no discrepancy. Pamela turns. The voice belongs to the woman in 4A who had looked back down at her reading. She is looking up now. She has reading glasses on. She looks, if anything, tired of this. He showed his boarding pass, the woman says. The attendant confirmed the seat. You are not presenting new information. You are presenting a preference. Pamela stares at her. The woman looks back at her book. In the aisle, something is shifted. Not dramatically, there is no applause, no chorus of agreement, but the silence that has been protecting the situation has developed a crack, and through that crack something is leaking that cannot be put back. Trevor Oakes in 5B has stopped half smiling. He is watching Derek Voss now. Derek Voss is staring at his phone with the intensity of a man who very badly needs his phone to be more interesting than it is. Marcus, still seated, still unhurried, reaches into the interior pocket of his jacket. He removes a small device, barely visible, no larger than a watch face, and presses his thumb against it once. In a Washington, D.C. office, a woman named Lena Morris, 36, Marcus's senior research assistant, receives a signal on her screen. She does not need to be told what one press means. She opens the logging software. She begins recording timestamp entries. She notes the flight number. She notes the time, 8:47 a.m. She makes herself a cup of coffee because she can tell from the single press that this is going to take a while. Pamela Voss looks at Marcus and says with the patient finality of someone who has not yet understood that the room has changed, "There is a simple solution. He could take a different seat and we could all move on." Marcus looks up from his document for the second time. "I am in my seat," he says. "We are all already moving on." Robert Hastings arrives the way operations managers arrive in tense situations, with the energy of a person who has already decided what the problem is before walking through the door. He is 52 years old, stocky with the slightly compressed look of a man who carries stress in his shoulders and has for many years. His Northstar Airways badge hangs from a lanyard. A radio is clipped to his belt. His expression as he steps through the cabin door and surveys the scene carries the particular confidence of institutional authority, the assumption that the presence of his badge will settle whatever needs settling. His eyes move across the cabin. They find Pamela Voss. They find her posture, her designer bag, her platinum lanyard. They find the patient-wronged expression of a woman who expects to be accommodated. Then they find Marcus Ellison in seat 2A. The decision, and it is a decision made in under 3 seconds, made without a single question asked or a single document reviewed, lands in Robert's face before he opens his mouth. "Sir," he says to Marcus, "I am going to need you to collect your belongings." Marcus looks at him calmly. "Are you removing me because my ticket is invalid? You are being removed because you are refusing to cooperate with crew instructions." "Which instruction did I refuse?" Robert's jaw tightens. He turns to Diana. Diana is looking at the space between them. "The passenger has been non-compliant since boarding," Diana says. The words sound rehearsed, not because she prepared them, but because they are words that exist in a script she did not know she was following until this moment. "Marcus, did anyone verify my seat assignment before deciding I was non-compliant?" "Robert, that is not the..." "Did anyone ask me a single question before concluding that I was the problem in this situation?" Robert's radio crackles. He turns it down. He turns back to Marcus with the expression of a man who has discovered that this is more complicated than he was told. "Sir, I need you to gather your things." "I would like the reason documented," Marcus says, "in writing, with your name attached to it." Robert does not answer that. He steps toward the galley and speaks to Diana in a low voice that is not as low as he intends it to be. In 2B, Frank hears Voss family, platinum long relationship, just get him moved, offer a voucher. Frank does not look away. Sophia's phone captures the angle. Pamela, who has remained standing in the aisle with the patience of someone waiting for a vending machine to dispense what she has already paid for, watches Robert return to 2A with a sense of things finally being managed correctly. "Mr. Ellison," Robert says, "I am asking you to cooperate." "I have been cooperating," Marcus says. Cooperating does not mean vacating. Robert's patience, which was never deep, runs out here. He makes a mistake. He reaches toward Marcus's briefcase. Not aggressively. It is a controlled gesture, the kind of gesture that says, "This is mine to handle." He reaches toward the handle of the briefcase the way a person reaches toward something they have decided they have the right to move. Marcus's hand covers the handle first. He does not move fast. He does not startle. His hand simply arrives on the briefcase handle before Robert's does and rests there with the quiet firmness of a man who has spent 40 years protecting documents that mattered. "You will not touch my property," Marcus says. His voice has not risen. It will not rise. It is the voice of someone who does not need volume because every word he speaks has already calculated its own weight. The cabin reacts. Not loudly. A breath held a woman's hand going to her mouth, someone 3 rows back saying, "Oh," in a tone that encompasses an entire sentence. Frank Okafor is on his feet. "That was a physical reach toward a passenger's personal property," Frank says. He addresses Robert directly, marine straight, no flinching. "By a staff member. Without consent. I want that documented too." Robert turns on him with the irritation of a man who expected his rank to be sufficient. "Sir, this does not involve you. Please be seated." "I am seated," Frank says. "I was seated when your attendant approached. This passenger without cause. I stood because what I am watching requires standing." He pauses. "I spent 26 years in the Marine Corps. I have significant experience distinguishing between lawful authority and the appearance of it. What I am watching right now is the appearance." Robert steps toward him. "I will have you removed as well." Frank does not move. "Then remove me. But write down why." The cabin is fully alert now. The pretense of private conversation is gone. What is happening in rows 1 through 5 is visible and audible to every passenger on the aircraft, and every passenger has made a choice. To film or not film, to speak or be silent, to look up or look away. Trevor Oakes in 5B has his elbows on his knees. The half-smile is completely gone. He is watching Robert Hastings and something is moving behind his eyes. Not guilt, not yet, but the early, uncomfortable recognition that comes before guilt. The sense of having been on the wrong side of something before he had finished deciding which side he was on. And then Pamela Voss makes what will later become the moment she cannot take back. She steps fully into the aisle. She turns and addresses the cabin. Not just Diana, not just Robert, but every person within earshot. with the voice of a woman who has decided that the scale of her certainty justifies the scale of her audience. "Why is everyone acting as if this is unusual?" she says. "Look at him. I am not the only one who sees it." The sentence is not finished. It does not need to be. Everyone in the cabin understands exactly what she is seeing and what she is asking them to confirm. The silence that follows is the loudest thing in the cabin, because no one confirms it. Not the woman in 4A who looks up from her book, not the man in 6C who has been listening since the beginning, not Trevor Oakes in 5B who looks down at his hands, not Derek Voss who very slowly turns his face toward the window. The silence lands on Pamela like something physical. And then Sophia Reyes from 3C says, "Clearly I want the record to show that no one agreed with that." Sophia's phone is still raised. She is no longer pretending to scroll. She is filming openly now, and in the 12 seconds since Pamela spoke, the clip has been uploaded to a private cloud folder with an automatic timestamp. In the galley, Diana Price stands with her back to the cabin and her hands flat on the counter and her eyes closed for approximately 2 seconds, which is as long as she can afford. Robert Hastings radios for security, and Marcus Ellison presses his thumb against the small device in his pocket one more time. Not a single press, 2 quick presses. The escalation signal. In Washington, D.C., Lena Morris straightens at her desk. She has been logging since 8:47. She opens a second window. She begins preparing the documents that Marcus asked her to have ready in the event of escalation. She does not need to be told what 2 presses means. She has worked with Marcus for 9 years. 2 presses means this is the one. They arrive within 3 minutes. 2 airport security officers, one behind the other, stepping through the aircraft door with the measured pace of people who have been called to many situations and have learned not to run until they know what they are running into. Behind them comes Denise Howell, 47, Northstar customer service supervisor, in a gray blazer with the slightly frayed left cuff of someone who works more hours than her salary accounts for. Her expression as she enters the cabin is the expression of a person who has seen too many of these situations and hoped today would not be one of them. The first security officer is named Agent Reyes. He is in his mid-40s, Hispanic, with the particular calm of someone who has spent enough time in airports to know that the person described as disruptive is not always the person causing the disruption. He looks at Robert Hastings first. Robert gestures toward Marcus. "Disruptive passenger, refused crew instructions, needs to be removed." Agent Reyes looks toward Marcus. Marcus is seated. His hands are visible. His briefcase is on his lap closed. His posture is, if anything, more relaxed than the posture of anyone else in the first-class cabin. Sir Agent Reyes says, approaching 2A. "Is that you?" "I am the passenger being removed," Marcus says. "Yes." "You seem calm." "I am calm." Agent Reyes studies him for a moment. Then he looks back at Robert. "Walk me through the safety concern." He has been challenging crew members since boarding. Non-compliant. Refused to vacate when instructed. "Marcus, officer, may I ask a question?" Agent Reyes looks at him. "Did anyone, before calling security, review my boarding pass and confirm the seat assignment?" Agent Reyes looks at Robert. Robert says nothing. Marcus continues, his voice carrying the same, even unhurried cadence it has carried throughout. "Did anyone tell you that I remained seated, spoke at a normal volume, and complied with every request that was lawfully made of me? Did anyone document that the only instruction I declined was to vacate a seat that belongs to me?" Agent Reyes looks at Robert again. Robert says the passenger was creating a disturbance. "Marcus, I would ask you to look around this cabin and identify the disturbance." The second officer does look around. He looks at Marcus seated and still. He looks at Pamela Voss standing in the aisle. He looks at Frank Okafor standing at attention. He looks at Sophia Reyes with her phone raised. He looks at the ambient tension that has made every passenger in first class visibly uncomfortable. He looks at Robert Hastings. Something shifts in his expression. Robert, feeling the room turning, does what weak authority does when it senses exposure. He distributes the weight. The crew initiated the seating review. I was responding to their concern. Diana from the galley doorway. "You told me to handle it." "Robert, lower Diana, this is not the time." Diana steps forward. Her voice is steady, but her hands are not. You called me from the gate. You said the Voss family were high-value platinum customers. You said if there was a conflict, we should find a comfortable solution for them. She looks at Marcus, and something in her expression is trying to reach toward honesty and not quite making it there yet, but beginning the journey. You said offer the other passenger a voucher and a syrup in coach. The cabin receives this in total silence. Pamela Voss, who has been standing in the aisle with the posture of someone waiting for vindication, looks at Robert Hastings with an expression that is, for the first time, uncertain. Not guilty, not yet, but uncertain. Derek Voss, for the first time, looks at his wife instead of his phone. What crosses his face is not surprise. That is the most revealing thing about it. He is not surprised. He is recognizing something he has seen before, wearing different clothes in different rooms on different mornings. The thing his wife does when she decides that her comfort requires someone else's displacement, and the way the institutions around her have over the years learned to accommodate that requirement. He turns away from her. He looks at the seat back in front of him. He does not look back. Marcus rises from seat 2A. He does it slowly, deliberately. Not because he is surrendering. He will return to this seat and everyone in the cabin will be present when he does. But because the moment has arrived for a different kind of statement, one that cannot be made sitting down. He lifts his briefcase from the floor. He places the strap over one shoulder. He turns toward Robert Hastings and Agent Reyes and the second officer and Denise Howell and the entire cabin, all of whom are watching him with the careful attention of people who understand on some level that they are watching something that matters. His voice carries to every row. I will leave my seat, but before I do, I want the specific reason for my removal documented, in writing, with the name of the person who made that decision attached to it. Robert stares at him. I want it noted that I provided my boarding pass when asked, that I answered every question, that I did not raise my voice or make a threatening gesture, that the only instruction I declined was to vacate a confirmed first-class seat based on another passenger's preference. Frank, behind him. I will sign that statement. Sophia from 3C, so will I. Denise Howell, who has been taking quiet notes on her phone since she entered the cabin, swallows. Robert's mouth opens. Nothing emerges. Marcus looks at Agent Reyes. Officer, I have some identification I would like you to see. Not because I need it to justify my presence in this seat. I do not, and that is a point I want preserved in whatever report is filed today. But because I think it is relevant to how the next 20 minutes are going to proceed. He opens the leather card holder. Unhurried, deliberate, the way a man opens something that has waited in his pocket for exactly the right moment. He hands Agent Reyes a single card. Agent Reyes reads it. His eyebrows lift. He reads it again. His expression does not change dramatically, he is a professional, but something in the set of his jaw shifts. Robert notices. What does it say? Agent Reyes does not answer him. He looks at Marcus. Marcus looks back, and the look says, give me one moment. I have something to tell everyone in this cabin, and I want everyone in this cabin to hear it together. Marcus Ellison is 29 years old, and his briefcase is new. The leather is dark and rich, the stitching immaculate, the handle unmarked by the tape that will one day reinforce it. He bought it 3 weeks after passing the bar examination, with money his mother gave him and money he saved during 2 years of paralegal work. He chose it because it looked serious, because it said without words what he wanted to be able to say when he walked into a room, I belong here, I earned this, I am prepared. It is a Tuesday in October, Washington, D.C. The sky is the particular gray of a city that moves regardless of weather. He is dressed in his best suit, the one his mother helped him select at a department store on a Saturday, a navy with a faint pinstripe conservative and professional, and exactly right for a first interview at a law firm. The firm is called Aldridge and Marsh. It is housed in a building with a marble lobby and a doorman who nods as Marcus enters. He crosses the lobby to the reception desk. The receptionist is young, professionally pleasant. She looks at him, takes in the briefcase, the suit, the navy tie, and says with genuine helpfulness, "Are you here for the maintenance position? The interview is on 3. Marcus stops. He looks at her. She looks back, her expression unchanged, her smile intact, completely unaware of what she has just said. He says quietly, "I am here for the associate attorney position. I have a 9 o'clock. The receptionist's smile flickers. She checks her screen. "Oh, of course, I am so sorry. Please have a seat." He sits. He waits 40 minutes. The other candidates who arrive after him, 2 men both white in suits not unlike his own, are called in within minutes of their arrival. He watches this. He notes it the way he will spend the rest of his career, noting things precisely, without embellishment, without the luxury of attributing to malice what can be explained by oversight, because the entire history of his profession has taught him that the most consequential injustices are rarely the ones people are conscious of committing. The partner finally calls him in at 9:40. She is apologetic, harried, distracted. She tells him at the end of 20 minutes that the position has been filled. Through the glass wall of the conference room, he can see 2 of the men who arrived after him still waiting in the reception area. He collects his briefcase. He thanks her for her time. He takes the metro home, and that evening he sits at his kitchen table and writes for 3 hours in the legal pad he keeps beside his coffee maker. He writes down the time he arrived, the time the others arrived, the time he was seen, the exact words of the receptionist, the exact words of the partner. He writes it the way he was trained in law school to document everything that might one day matter. He goes to sleep at 2 in the morning. He does not go to sleep angry. He goes to sleep the way a man goes to sleep when he has transformed something painful into something purposeful. Not healed, not resolved, but channeled, directed, pointed forward. 4 years later, Marcus represents a former Aldridge and Marsh associate in a discrimination case involving promotion practices. He wins. The settlement terms are sealed, but the partners remember his name. And Marcus, who has kept the legal pad, adds one more note to the bottom of that October entry. Documentation finds its purpose eventually. You just have to keep it long enough. He has kept every pad since. The briefcase beside his feet on Flight 614 has carried them all at one point or another. Scratched and taped and worn at the corners, it is not a symbol of what he has lost. It is a record of what he has never stopped building. Marcus is 44, and he is on a flight home from Detroit. He has just won a housing discrimination case. A black family in Dearborn denied mortgage approval 6 consecutive times, despite meeting every qualifying criterion on every application. He spent 14 months on the case. He is tired in the specific way that significant victories make a person tired, not depleted, but emptied of the tension that had been holding everything upright, suddenly aware of how much weight he had been carrying. He boards in business class. He has the aisle seat. Confirmed. He settles in, orders water, removes his shoes. The flight attendant who comes to him is somewhere in her mid-30s. She has dark hair, a practiced smile, and a voice calibrated for the register of professional warmth. She stops beside his seat. "Sir, I think there may have been an error with your seat assignment." Marcus looks at her. He has been hearing this sentence, or versions of it, its cousins and its echoes, for 16 years. He hears it in airports. He hears it at hotel desks. He hears it at the entrance to gallery openings, and at the doors of private clubs, and at the reception desks of law firms when he is 29 years old, and his briefcase is new. He always hears it with the same inflection, the careful inflection of someone who believes they are doing him a favor by pointing out that something has gone wrong, without ever asking whether the wrong thing is what they think it is. "What error?" he asks. "The system may have double-booked this seat. We would like to offer you an alternative." "What alternative?" "We have a seat in coach with a travel voucher." Marcus reaches into his jacket and produces his boarding pass. He holds it out. She takes it. She reviews it. Her eyes move from the seat assignment to his face, then back. "Let me check with my supervisor," she says and smiles and walks away. He waits 17 minutes. During those 17 minutes, 3 separate passengers in business class board settle into their seats and are offered pre-departure drinks. None of them are asked to verify their seat assignment. 2 of them arrive after Marcus. One of them is seated directly across the aisle and does not look at him once. The flight attendant returns. I have confirmed there is a system issue with this seat. We can offer you 3B with priority check-in on your next flight. I would like to remain in my seat, Marcus says. Sir, I understand, but the system... If there is a system issue, I would like to see it documented, with my ticket, my name, and the specific reason the seat is being reassigned. She pauses. She brings a supervisor. The supervisor brings a patient, low-level firmness. Marcus asks for documentation again. They bring a different supervisor. Marcus asks for documentation again. Eventually, they move on. He stays. But the woman in the seat beside him, who witnessed the entire exchange from 3 feet away, who heard every word, who watched 17 minutes of a man's time and dignity slowly be negotiated while people in comparable seats were offered champagne, spends the rest of the flight reading her magazine without once looking at him. That silence is what stays with Marcus on the drive home from the airport. Not the flight attendant, not the supervisors, not the manufactured system issue that dissolved the moment he refused to accept it. The woman reading her magazine. He has come to understand over years of this work that silence is not neutral. It is not the absence of a choice. It is a choice made quietly, at low cost to the person making it, at high cost to the person who needed something different. Silence is the ambient condition in which this kind of behavior survives, not because the people maintaining it are monstrous, but because the people watching it have decided that watching is sufficient, that watching is not participating, that a person can observe an injustice from 3 feet away and remain uninvolved. They cannot. He learned that at 29, sitting in a reception area for 40 minutes watching other candidates walk past him. He relearned it at 44, watching a woman decide that her magazine was more important than the conversation happening beside her. He is relearning it now at 61 in seat 2A, watching Robert Hastings reach for a radio while Diana Price looks at the floor and a cabin full of passengers makes a series of small, quiet decisions about who they are willing to be today. The only difference is that this time Marcus is not just witnessing the pattern. He is documenting it. And the documentation is almost complete. The cabin of Flight 614 is quiet in the way that holds its breath. Agent Reyes is still holding the card. He has read it twice. His expression has settled into something careful and deliberate. The expression of a man recalibrating what he understands to be true about the last 20 minutes. Robert Hastings is watching Agent Reyes the way a man watches a door he expected to walk through and has just discovered is locked. Diana Price is in the galley doorway with her hands flat at her sides. Denise Howell is very still. Marcus looks around the cabin the way he has looked around many rooms over many years. Courtrooms, boardrooms, legislative hearing rooms, the small windowless offices where people decide other people's fates. He looks at each face the way he reads a document for what it says, and for what it is careful not to say. Frank Okafor in 2B. Standing, hands still flat at his sides, the Marines at ease. His face carries the particular composure of a man who has decided what he stands for and is currently standing there. Sophia Reyes in 3C, phone raised, steady, watching everything with the eyes of someone who is both participant and recorder, who understands that documentation and presence are not opposites, but responsibilities that happen simultaneously. Trevor Oakes in 5B, elbows on knees, no longer half smiling. Something has rearranged itself behind his eyes. Not guilt, yet not the full weight of it, but the early light of it, the kind that arrives before a person is ready to call it what it is. Derek Voss in 2C, not looking at his wife. His phone is face down in his lap. He is looking at the seat back in front of him with the expression of a man who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has just realized how heavy it is. Pamela Voss standing in the aisle. For the first time since she boarded this aircraft, she is uncertain. Not sorry. That will come later, in pieces, slowly, the way things come when they cost something. But uncertain in the way of a person who has just discovered that the floor they were standing on is not as solid as it appeared. Marcus looks at Diana. Diana meets his eyes for the first time since she stopped beside his seat. What passes between them is not warm, it is not forgiving, it is something more useful than either of those things, it is honest. The acknowledgement, wordless from one adult to another, that what happened in this cabin was not confusion. It was a series of choices, each one building on the last, each one small enough to feel manageable at the time, each one adding its weight to what became, in aggregate, this. A man told to leave a seat that belonged to him. Marcus turns to Agent Reyes. "Officer," he says quietly, "I have some things to say, and I would like everyone present when I say them." Agent Reyes looks at Denise Howell. Denise Howell looks at Robert. Robert looks at the floor. There is a pause that lasts approximately 4 seconds. It is the pause in which an institution makes a choice about what it is willing to do when the truth becomes undeniable, whether it reaches for it or away from it, whether it protects itself or the people inside it, whether it chooses the cover of procedure or the exposure of accountability. Denise Howell steps into the aisle. She holds her phone loosely in one hand. Her voice when she speaks is quiet but clear. "Everyone stays," she says. "Nobody leaves this cabin until Mr. Hastings and I have spoken to this passenger." Robert opens his mouth. Denise looks at him with the expression of a woman who has worked 18 years at this airline and has finally run out of reasons to be diplomatic. "Nobody," she says again. Robert closes his mouth. Marcus turns back towards seat 2A. He does not sit yet. He stands there, still certain, holding the worn briefcase at his side, and waits for what he has known since 30 seconds after he boarded this aircraft was coming. Marcus sets his briefcase on the seat beside him. He opens it without hurry, not reaching for a weapon, not reaching for drama, reaching for the thing he has carried in this case for 6 weeks through 6 flights across 4 time zones in preparation for the moment when documentation would need to speak for itself. He removes a leather credential holder and a single sealed envelope with the Northstar Airways Board of Directors seal embossed in the corner. He hands both to Agent Reyes. Agent Reyes opens the credential holder first. He reads it. He reads it again. He shows it to the second officer, who reads it and says nothing, but whose expression shifts the same way Agent Reyes's expression shifted. Inward, recalibrating. Then Marcus speaks. "My name is Marcus Ellison. I am a federal civil rights investigator and independent outside counsel retained by the Northstar Airways Board of Directors." The words move through the cabin the way a pressure wave moves through water, not loud but felt everywhere simultaneously in the chest and the throat and the space behind the eyes where people process information that changes what they thought they understood. Diana's tablet slips. She catches it. Her face, for one unguarded moment, shows the expression of a person who has just understood the full dimension of what they have participated in. Robert Hastings looks at the credential holder in Agent Reyes's hand. He stares at it with the expression of a man watching the ground shift beneath him. Marcus continues with the even cadence of someone who has given opening statements in federal court and knows that clarity is more powerful than volume. 6 weeks ago, the Northstar Airways Board retained me to conduct a confidential review of 31 passenger complaints filed over the past 3 years. Each complaint described treatment that individually could be attributed to coincidence or operator error. Together, they described a pattern. The same pattern recurring across different routes, different crew members, different airports, always with the same essential structure. A black or brown passenger in a premium seat, and a decision made by airline staff influenced by the preferences of other passengers to remove them. He looks at Robert. I agreed to conduct this review by boarding flights without announcement, as ordinary passengers do, so that I could see what the passengers saw from where the passengers sat. He looks at Diana. I did not board this flight expecting to become part of the evidence. A pause, one beat, but I am not surprised. The cabin is so quiet that the air conditioning is audible. 3 rows back, someone has stopped breathing and has not noticed yet. Marcus holds out the sealed envelope to Denise Howell. This envelope contains authorization from Northstar's board attorney confirming my retained status and the scope of the investigation. It was sealed at board counsel's office and has not been opened. I would suggest opening it now in front of everyone present. Denise takes it. Her hands are not steady. She opens it carefully, the way a person opens something they already know will change the next hour of their life. She reads the first paragraph. She reads it twice. Then she steps into the galley. She is on the phone for less than 90 seconds. She speaks in the low, careful voice of someone delivering information that she understands will have immediate and significant consequences. She returns to the cabin. She looks at every person in first class, crew passengers, security officers, before she speaks. The chief executive officer of Northstar Airways is on her way from the operations building. The sentence lands. Robert Hastings' confidence does not shatter. That would require it to have been solid. What happens is smaller and more complete. A slow deflation visible in his eyes before it reaches his face, the expression of a man who chose speed over fairness and is now calculating what that choice is going to cost him. Diana steps back until she is against the galley wall. She is holding her tablet with both hands now, pressing it against her chest the way a person holds something in front of them when they are not sure what they need protection from. Pamela Voss sits down. She does not say anything. For the first time since she stood up in this cabin, she sits down and the absence of her voice is the loudest thing that has happened in the last 20 minutes. Derek looks at her. She does not look back. Sophia's second post goes up at 9:14 a.m. 43 seconds of footage. Marcus standing, Robert's hand moving toward the briefcase. Marcus's hand arriving first, Frank on his feet, Diana's expression. The caption which Sophia composes in 11 seconds and will think about for years afterward. He was the airline's own investigator. They still tried to remove him. Watch what happens next. The post reaches 200,000 views before Vivian Cross reaches the jet bridge. It reaches 400,000 before she steps through the aircraft door. The story has left the cabin. It is in the world now, moving at the speed of recognition. The speed at which people look at something and understand without needing to be told that they have seen this before. That this is not new. That the pattern Marcus described in the first-class cabin of Flight 614 is not the property of one airline or one morning, but belongs to a much longer and much older inventory of moments exactly like this one, each one small enough to be denied, each one adding its weight to something that eventually becomes undeniable. By the time Vivian Cross arrives, the undeniable has arrived first. She comes through the aircraft door without an entourage. No press secretary, no assistant, no advance team clearing the corridor. Vivian Cross, 57 years old, Chief Executive Officer of Northstar Airways, walks on to Flight 614 the same way she has walked into every difficult room in her career. Alone, clear-eyed, carrying only what she needs, which is never very much. She is wearing a dark navy suit. Her hair is silver at the temples. She has the kind of stillness that comes from spending 25 years making decisions that cost something. Not the stillness of a person who is unaffected, but the stillness of a person who has learned to feel the weight of a situation before they speak into it. She steps into the first-class cabin. Every Northstar employee in the plane goes still in the particular way that employees go still when the highest authority they answer to walks into the room. Not afraid, not yet, but suddenly acutely aware of the gap between what they were doing and what they were supposed to be doing. Vivian's eyes move across the cabin. She finds Marcus first. Not Robert, not Diana, not the security officers standing in the aisle. Marcus first, as if she had been told exactly where he would be, or as if she is simply the kind of person who has learned to find in any room the person who should not have been made to wait. Mr. Ellison. Her voice carries. It is not loud. It does not need to be. Are you injured? No. Were you physically touched? A staff member reached toward my briefcase. I prevented contact. Vivian nods once, then she turns to Robert Hastings. Walk me through the safety concern that required removing a seated passenger from a confirmed first-class seat. Robert's mouth opens. Robert's mouth closes. He looks at Diana. Diana is looking at the floor. Robert looks back at Vivian. She is waiting with the patience of someone who has all the time in the world and intends to use it. The passenger was... Robert starts. Was what? Non-compliant. Non-compliant with which instruction? Silence. Mr. Hastings, I am going to ask you once more. What specific instruction did this passenger refuse that constituted a safety concern? Robert swallows. He refused to vacate when instructed. and the instruction to vacate was based on what Robert looks at Diana again. Diana is now looking at the galley doorway. There was a concern about the seat assignment. The seat assignment, Vivian says, which was confirmed as valid. A passenger raised a preference, Vivian says, and you responded to that preference by initiating the removal of the passenger with the valid ticket. The sentence falls into the cabin with the precision of something that has been aimed. Frank Okafor speaks from 2B. I have been in this seat since boarding. The gentleman provide Dewey pass when asked. He answered every question. He did not raise his voice. The first person to raise their voice in this cabin was the manager, who arrived already knowing what decision he was going to make. Vivian looks at Frank. Thank you. She looks at Sophia. Did you record this from the beginning? From the moment the flight attendant stopped at his seat, Sophia says. All of it. All of it. Vivian, to Denise Howell, preserve the recording through legal. Do not touch her phone. Do not ask her to delete anything. Denise nods. Vivian turns back to the cabin. She takes a breath, and when she speaks, it is to every person within earshot, and she does not lower her voice, because what she is about to say is not for the crew or the security officers or Robert Hastings. It is for every passenger who watched what happened in the last 30 minutes and is waiting to hear whether the institution they trusted with their morning is going to protect them or protect itself. This flight will not depart until I have a full account of what happened in this cabin. Pamela Voss from her seat. You cannot delay the entire flight because of one Mrs. Voss. Vivian turns to her. The temperature in the cabin drops approximately 2 degrees. A misunderstanding is when facts are unclear. These facts were not unclear. She nods toward Diana, who is still holding Marcus's boarding pass. A valid passenger presented his documentation. His seat was confirmed. He was cooperative, calm, and entirely within his rights. And he was still threatened with removal. She looks at Robert. That is not confusion. That is a decision. And decisions have consequences. Then she says the sentence that changes the geometry of everything in the cabin. Mrs. Voss, you will also be leaving this aircraft. Pamela stares at her. I am a platinum member. I fly this route every... You are a passenger whose conduct directly initiated a discriminatory removal process, Vivian says. You will be rebooked after customer relations reviews the matter. Yes, I can do this. Pamela looks at Derek. For the second time in the last 20 minutes, she is asking him, without words, the way spouses ask each other things without words across decades of marriage, to come to her side to translate her behavior into something more acceptable, to do what he has always done, which is to absorb the discomfort of her choices so that she does not have to. Derek looks at her. He looks at her for a long moment, with the eyes of a man who has, in the last 30 minutes, watched his wife demand the removal of a man from a seat he had rightfully paid for, and has finally allowed himself to see it clearly without the soft focus lens of accommodation he has maintained for years. He says no, one word. Very quiet. The cabin hears it. Pamela's face goes through 3 expressions in approximately 2 seconds. Surprise, hurt, something that if it were allowed to develop might eventually become shame, but has not yet fully arrived there. You are choosing strangers over your wife. Derek looks back at the seat in front of him. I am choosing not to participate anymore. Pamela pulls her carry-on from the overhead bin. She does it efficiently with the precise movements of a woman performing composure because she will not give this cabin the satisfaction of watching her unravel. She walks toward the door without looking at Marcus. At the door, she stops. Her back is to the cabin. Her hand is on the door frame. She stands there for 3 seconds. Then she walks out. Robert Hastings surrenders his badge and radio to Denise Howell. He does it without meeting anyone's eyes. He goes past Frank, past Sophia, past Trevor Oakes, who watches him with the expression of a man who has just quietly changed his mind about which story he was in, and out the door. Diana follows. She pauses beside Marcus. She looks at him with the beginning of something, not absolution, not closure, not even fully an apology, but the beginning of an honest reckoning. It is the most she can offer right now. It is visible on her face. Marcus meets her eyes and holds them. She goes, And Vivian Cross, Chief Executive Officer of Northstar Airways, steps fully into the first-class cabin and says to every person remaining, "Your seat is yours, Mr. Ellison. It always was." Marcus returns to 2A. He places his briefcase beside his feet. He opens the document on his lap. Complaint file number 14, the cardiologist, Atlanta to Boston, and smooths the page. He does not smile. He does not look around for acknowledgement. He simply sits the way a man sits when he has been right all along and never needed anyone to confirm it, and returns to his reading. In 3C, Sophia posts the full video at 9:31 a.m. The caption, composed in 30 seconds, is one sentence: "He was right the whole time. Watch all of it." By the time the cabin crew begins preparing for departure, the video has 600,000 views. By the time the aircraft leaves the gate, it has crossed 1 million. And somewhere in the comments between the outrage and the declarations and the people tagging their friends and the people saying "this is why I do not fly there" is a single comment from an account with a profile picture of a man in a white coat and no other identifying information. It says Atlanta to Boston, 18 months ago. Thank you for not letting it stay buried. Marcus will read that comment 3 days later on a Tuesday morning at his kitchen table with his first cup of coffee. He will not cry. He will not celebrate. He will open a new page in his legal pad and begin writing. The aircraft door closes. Not the departure door. The door through which Robert, Diana, and Pamela left. Denise pulls it shut, and the cabin, which has been open to the jet bridge for the last 22 minutes, is suddenly private again. Sealed. Holding everything that happened inside it like a ship that has weathered something and is now sitting still in the aftermath, taking stock of what the storm left behind. Vivian Cross stands in the aisle. She speaks to the remaining passengers. Not a speech, not a statement, not corporate language shaped by legal review, just a person in a cabin telling the truth. What happened here this morning was wrong. I want you to hear me say that. Without qualifiers, without context, without the language we sometimes use to make institutional failures sound like operational inconveniences. A man was told through his treatment that he needed to prove he belonged somewhere he had already paid to be. That is wrong. It will not be resolved with a voucher. She looks at Marcus. Mr. Ellison, the flight is yours. The seat is yours. And this airline owes you more than I can offer right now in an aisle. But I will start with the truth, which is that you were right, and we were wrong, and I am sorry. Marcus looks at her. I appreciate that, he says. The people who need to hear an apology most are the 31 individuals in my files. When the review is complete, I will expect the airline to address each of them directly. Vivian nods. One clean nod, no qualification. They will each be contacted. The cabin settles into a different kind of quiet. Not the held breath quiet of before, but something more like the quiet after a long-running argument finally reaches a point where both sides have said what is true. It is not comfortable, it is not warm, but it is real, and real is a beginning. Diana Price left the aircraft 4 minutes ago. But before she left, she stopped beside Marcus. Marcus knows what a person looks like when they are trying to reach honest. He has watched it in depositions and cross-examinations and settlement conferences for 40 years. He knows the difference between performed remorse and the real thing, which is slower and less polished and always arrives at the wrong moment because the right moment has already passed. Diana stood beside his seat and said, I am sorry. Marcus said, What are you sorry for? She looked at him. The question surprised her. She had prepared the apology but not the elaboration. And then she said, I knew. When I scanned your pass, before she said anything, I knew it was valid. I knew you were in the right seat. Marcus waited. And then she said, finally, I let her confidence become my certainty. And then I let his authority make it feel like procedure. Her voice cracked on the next part. She did not look away. I treated your presence as the problem, instead of her accusation. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. That, he said, is the beginning of an honest apology. Diana waited. The end, he said, is what you do the next time someone is treated this way. when no important title appears on a business card, when there is no investigation underway, when the person asking you to do the right thing has nothing in their hands but a boarding pass. Diana closed her eyes. She nodded. She left. The cabin has reorganized itself in the way that spaces reorganize after something significant. People have moved slightly, facing slightly differently. The geometry of who is looking at whom has shifted. It is subtle, but Marcus has spent a career reading rooms, and he reads this one. Frank Okafor has sat back down. He looks, if anything, lighter. The lightness that comes from having done the thing you were going to do, whether it cost you something or not, and discovering that it cost you nothing. He catches Marcus's eye. My father used to say something Frank says. A man's character is not measured when doing right is easy. It is measured when doing right costs him something. Marcus looks at him for a moment. How much did it cost you? Marcus asks. Frank considers this. A couple of minutes of comfort, he says. Nothing I will miss. Trevor Oakes speaks from 5B. He has been quiet since Pamela left. The half-smile that was on his face during the first minutes of this incident has been gone for a long time, replaced by something more effortful and less comfortable. The expression of a person working through something they should have worked through faster. Can I say something? He asks. Several people look at him. When she said it, when she said men like him do not sit in 2A, I did not say anything. He is looking at his hands. I thought it was not my business. I thought somebody else would handle it. He looks up at Marcus. I want to say I am sorry for that. Not because it changes what happened, but because I think I need to say it out loud to actually mean it. The cabin is quiet. Marcus says, "What are you going to do differently?" Trevor blinks. He clearly expected the apology to be the end of the exchange. I do not know yet. That is honest, Marcus says. Knowing you do not know is a better start than pretending you do. Trevor nods slowly. Derek Voss has not moved from his seat. He sits in 2C with his hands on his knees and his phone face down and his eyes on the middle distance. He has the stillness of a man who is not at peace, but has run out of the energy required to avoid what he is thinking about. He says without preamble, I have watched her do this for 23 years. Marcus across the aisle says nothing. Not always this directly. Usually it is smaller. A restaurant, a hotel, a comment at a party, that I translated into something softer so the people around us could continue being comfortable. He looks at Marcus now. I told myself I was keeping the peace. Marcus, whose peace? Derek looks at him. Not yours, Derek says quietly. I know that now. A pause. Silence does not prevent behavior, Marcus says. It protects it. Derek receives this. He does not look away. What do I do now? That is your question to answer, Marcus says. But I would start with the things you should have corrected and did not. Derek nods slowly. He knows what those things are. He has known for a long time. He is still sitting there when the replacement crew boards 20 minutes later. Sophia approaches Marcus with her phone lowered for the first time since she raised it 90 minutes ago. The video is at 2 million, she says. I am getting calls. From whom? 3 news outlets, 2 advocacy organizations, 1 anonymous account that offered me a significant amount of money for the full footage. Marcus does not hesitate. Do not respond to the anonymous offer. Save it and send it to investigators. The origin matters. As for the rest, you do not owe a statement today. Answer only when you know what you want your words to accomplish. Sophia looks at her phone. I wanted people to see what happened. They are seeing it. I want it to mean something. Not just go viral and disappear. Marcus looks at her. Record what happened after the footage ends, he says. The replacement crew, the way the cabin settled, Derek still sitting in his seat, Trevor apologizing to a man he could have simply ignored. Sophia looks around the cabin. The story after the story, she says. That is usually the more important one. The replacement crew arrives 30 minutes after Robert and Diana leave. They board with the unhurried efficiency of professionals stepping into a situation they have been briefed on but not rattled by. Calm, focused, giving nothing away about what they know except that they know what they are doing. The lead replacement attendant is Carol Penna. 59 years old, Latina with close-cropped silver hair and the particular steadiness of a woman who has been doing this for 31 years and has developed over that time the ability to read a cabin the moment she enters it. She reads this one in approximately 4 seconds. She approaches seat 2A and says without fuss, without performance, "Mr. Ellison, I am sorry for what you experienced before I arrived." Marcus looks at her. "This was not yours to apologize for." "No," Carol says. "But it is mine to make sure it does not continue from this point forward." That answer, the difference between taking responsibility for the past and taking responsibility for the present, lands in a way that a more elaborate apology would not. Marcus nods. "What is your name?" "Carol Penna." "How long have you been with Northstar?" 31 years. "Then you have seen this before." Carol holds his gaze. "More than I should have," she says. She checks his boarding pass, once without hesitation handing it back the way a person hands back something that never needed to be questioned. Then she moves down the aisle and addresses every other passenger with the same unhurried attention equal in each case, distributed without hierarchy. The aircraft door closes, the jet bridge disconnects. The plane begins to push back from the gate. At 35,000 feet somewhere over Missouri, the cabin has settled into the particular quiet of people who have been through something together and are now processing it separately. Marcus opens his briefcase. He removes the files, all 31 of them, in order, each one representing a person who sat in a seat and was made to prove they deserved it. He looks at them differently now than he did when he boarded this morning. He has always known they were real. Documentation and reality are not the same thing. He has spent 40 years translating real events into documentation, trying to preserve the texture of what happened in a language that courts and boards and oversight bodies can use. He is good at this translation. But sitting in seat 2A, 35,000 feet above Missouri, having spent the last 2 hours inside one of these files rather than reading about it, he is aware of how much the translation loses. What the documentation cannot capture, the specific stillness required to sit calmly while someone reaches for your property. The calculation involved in deciding whether to document or argue, record or confront. The energy expended simply on being visibly in a place where someone has decided you do not belong. He writes a note in the margin of file 14. Pattern confirmed firsthand. Documentation of lived experience insufficient to convey cost. Recommend board presentation include direct passenger testimony. Then he adds in smaller letters below, "Do not let this become a report. Keep it a story." Carol Penna returns to Marcus's row mid-flight. She adjusts the cabin temperature setting near his seat, and while her back is to the other passengers, she speaks quietly. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "The complaint files, are any of them from flight attendants? Employees who reported things internally?" Marcus looks at her. "Some," he says. "They were harder to find. Internal complaints have a way of becoming different documents by the time they reach the file." Carol nods. "I filed one 2 years ago," she says. "A supervisor mocked a passenger with hearing loss. In the galley but loud enough to hear. I filed it through the proper channel. What happened? My schedule worsened for 4 months. She is still facing the temperature panel, and the complaint became a note about communication style in crew interactions." Marcus is quiet. "Do you still have the original?" he asks, "before it was reclassified." Carol is quiet for a moment. "I kept a copy," she says. "I do not know why. I think I just did not want it to disappear entirely." Marcus reaches into his briefcase. He removes a business card. He holds it out without drawing attention to the exchange. "When we land," he says. "That copy matters more than you know." Carol takes the card. She tucks it into her uniform pocket with the practiced economy of someone who has learned how to do small, important things without being watched. She moves down the aisle. Derek Voss has barely moved since the plane left the gate. He sits in 2C like a man attending his own trial, present but not quite arrived, still calculating something he has been circling for 20 years. He speaks eventually at the specific angle that people speak when they are addressing someone next to them but are actually talking to themselves. "I signed a report once," he says, "at my company. A warehouse accident. An employee reported equipment failure for 8 months. Management kept rewriting his complaint until it sounded minor enough to dismiss. Marcus looks across the aisle. He lost 2 fingers, Derek says, on a machine that should have been repaired. He looks at his hands. I signed the report that said it was an unforeseeable incident. Marcus says nothing. It was not unforeseeable, Derek says. The employee had been saying so for 8 months. A pause. I kept telling myself I was managing the legal exposure, protecting the company, protecting the people whose jobs depended on the company not getting sued. He looks at Marcus. I was protecting myself from having to do something hard. Marcus. What are you going to do about it now? Derek closes his eyes. I do not know if there is anything I can do. There is always something, Marcus says. It is usually not comfortable. Derek nods. Very slowly, the nod of a man beginning for the first time to really count the cost. The flight begins its descent into Los Angeles at 12:48 p.m. The city appears gradually beneath the wing. First the grid of the suburbs, then the sprawl of the valleys, then the dense geometry of downtown rising through a layer of pale afternoon light. It is a familiar view, the kind a person sees from an airplane and thinks, I have been here before. I know this. Sophia in 3C is looking at her phone. Not the viral video. She stopped watching the view count climb somewhere over Nevada when it crossed 3 million and began to feel unreal. She is looking at her email. A new message has arrived from an account with no profile picture and no name. The subject line is blank. The body contains 3 sentences. We know who you are. That video does not tell the whole story. Name your price for the original. Sophia's face changes. Marcus is watching from 2A. He has been watching Sophia intermittently since takeoff, in the way that investigators watch things. Not intrusively, just peripherally. The habit of a man trained to notice when something important is happening in the middle distance. Sophia, he says quietly. She holds the phone across the aisle. He reads it once, then once more. Do not respond, he says. Forward it to the investigators. Save the timestamp. Do not open any attachments. Do you think it is the airline? I do not know who it is. That is why the investigators need to know it exists. Sophia nods. She forwards the email, saves a screenshot, and sets her phone face down on her tray. Frank in 2B has been listening without appearing to. Someone wants the video gone, he says. Someone wants the original gone, Marcus says. What is already public is already in the world. The plane descends further. The city comes closer. And then Sophia's phone buzzes with a different notification, a news alert. She reads it and her expression changes again, different this time. Not fear, something more complicated. She passes the phone to Frank first because Frank is closest. Frank reads it, his eyebrows lower. He passes it to Marcus without comment. It is a social media post, posted 12 minutes ago from an account with a profile picture that cannot be identified from the thumbnail. The post contains a 14-second clip from the cabin of Flight 614. The clip begins mid-confrontation. Marcus standing Robert pointing toward the door, Robert's voice saying, "This is your final warning," and ends there, cut before the security officers arrive, before Agent Reyes reads the card, before Vivian Cross walks through the door. The caption reads, "Caught on video. Disruptive passenger refuses to cooperate with Northstar crew. Demands special treatment, causes 40-minute delay. Airline caved to pressure." Where is the accountability? The post has 40,000 shares. Marcus reads it, sets the phone on his tray table, looks out the window. That is not what happened, Frank says. No, but it is what a person believes if they only watch 14 seconds of a 90-minute story. So we correct it. Sophia already has, Marcus says. He looks at her. The full video is already public. The truth is already in the world. This version will attract attention for a few hours, and then people will find the full version and the attention will shift. Are you sure? Sophia asks. Marcus is quiet for a moment. I am sure that truth moves more slowly than outrage, he says. And I am sure that the full story is a better story than the 14-second version, and people tend to choose the better story when they find it. He hands her phone back. Write one sentence under your original post, not a rebuttal, a direction. Full video posted above. Watch from the beginning before forming a conclusion. That is all. Sophia looks at him. That is it. Truth does not need to fight outrage, Marcus says. It just needs to be findable. Sophia types the sentence. Posts it. Below the original video, which is now at 4.2 million views, the sentence appears, full video posted above. Watch from the beginning before forming a conclusion. Within 6 minutes, the clip-based post's comment section begins to fill with links to the original. Within 18 minutes, the clip's share count has stopped growing. The city rises to meet the aircraft. Wheels touch runway. The story is no longer private, no longer contained, no longer something that happened between 6 people in a first-class cabin on a Tuesday morning. It is in the world, and the world is deciding what to do with it. The aircraft gate connects with a soft, mechanical thud. The cabin lights brighten. The seatbelt sign clicks off. Around the aircraft, the ordinary choreography of arrival begins. Overhead bins opening, phones coming on, the soft rustle of 100 people simultaneously returning to the world they temporarily left. But first class does not move yet. Vivian Cross stands near the front of the cabin with her hand on the seatback of 1A. She is on her phone, not speaking, listening with the expression of someone receiving information in sequence and processing it with controlled urgency. She ends the call. She looks at Denise Howell. They are at the gate, Denise says. Vivian nods. She looks at Marcus. There are investigators waiting, she says. Legal outside counsel, a federal transportation representative who apparently was already at the Los Angeles field office when your assistant called this morning. Marcus looks at the worn briefcase beside his feet. Lena is efficient, he says. A brief pause in which Vivian almost smiles. The media is at the secure perimeter, Denise adds. About a dozen reporters, last I heard. More than that now, Sophia says from 3C, looking at her phone. Marcus stands. He lifts the briefcase, places the strap over his shoulder and turns toward the door. He moves without hurry, without performance, the way he has moved through every room of this morning, as if the pace were a choice he made long ago and has not reconsidered. Frank is behind him, Sophia behind Frank. Derek Voss, still in 2C, begins to stand. The door opens. The jet bridge extends. Outside, the Los Angeles afternoon is bright and indifferent, the light of a city that does not pause for any one story. At the end of the jet bridge, 2 corporate attorneys in dark suits move toward Vivienne. A woman in a gray blazer, outside transportation investigator, late 40s, the kind of calm that comes from years of this work, approaches Marcus directly. Mr. Ellison, she extends her hand. I am glad Lena called. So am I, Marcus says. Beyond the secure checkpoint, the media crowd is visible through the glass. Cameras raised, reporters speaking into phones, the particular organized chaos of a story that arrived before the people it is about did. A reporter's voice cuts through the glass, Mr. Ellison. Were you removed because of your race? Marcus walks past without altering his pace. Sophia follows and a reporter calls her name. Her shoulders tighten. Marcus, without looking back. You do not owe anyone a statement right now. Answer when you know what you want your words to do. Frank beside her. And do not let them make you the story. Sophia nods. They move through the terminal. Behind them, the aircraft sits at its gate ordinary again, the way ordinary things look after they have been inside something extraordinary, unchanged in appearance, entirely changed in meaning. The private conference room is down a service corridor past a door that requires a badge to open away from the terminal's noise. It is furnished with a rectangular table, 8 chairs, a whiteboard that someone has not fully erased, and the particular institutional lighting that makes everyone in the room look slightly more tired than they are. Vivian sits at one end, Marcus at the other. Between them, 2 Northstar corporate attorneys, a human resources director named Patricia Owens, the outside transportation investigator, and a communications director. Denise Howell sits to the side near the door with a legal pad and a pen and the expression of a woman who has decided to document everything. The communications director places a printed statement on the table. She slides it toward Marcus. He reads the first sentence. Northstar Airways deeply regrets the misunderstanding aboard Flight 614 and is committed to reviewing our procedures to ensure all passengers are treated with respect. He sets it down. No. The communications director looks at him. We need language that protects. You need language that does not deny reality. He slides the paper back. That sentence contains the word misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. The seat assignment was clear. The passenger's conduct was calm. Employees chose to remove him anyway. Those are verified facts. Multiple witnesses, hours of footage, your own CEO's verbal acknowledgement on the aircraft. The attorney beside the communications director speaks carefully. We are not in a position to make admissions before the investigation is. I am not asking for admissions about motive, Marcus says. I am asking for a statement that accurately describes conduct. State the verified facts. A valid passenger was challenged, his documentation was confirmed, he was still subject to a removal attempt. Witnesses and video support each of these facts. That is it. No adjectives, just sequence. Vivian looks at the communications director. Rewrite it. The communications director opens her mouth, closes it, picks up the paper, opens her laptop. Then the door opens. Carol Penna enters. She is still in her replacement crew uniform, carrying a sealed manila envelope. She crosses the room and sets it on the table in front of Marcus. These are copies, she says. The originals are in a secure location. Patricia Owens, the HR director, straightens. Those materials may be company property. If they contain internal... They are passenger complaints, Carol says, filed by passengers. They belong to the passengers who filed them. The protocol for complaint handling. The protocol for complaint handling is exactly the problem, Carol says. Her voice is level, but there is a current beneath it that has been running for 2 years and is finally surfacing. I filed a complaint through the proper channel. It was reclassified. My schedule was altered. The passenger I reported on behalf of received no response. Patricia Owens looks at Vivian. Vivian looks at Carol. When you say reclassified, the original said a crew member mocked a passenger with hearing loss. The filed version said there was a communication style concern during a challenging boarding interaction. Carol folds her hands. Those are not the same document. The room is very quiet. Marcus opens the envelope. Inside printed emails, original complaint drafts beside their reclassified versions, a supervisor's instruction thread with a subject line that reads, RE Escalation Reduction Protocol, Implementation. He reads one sentence aloud, slowly. When a complaint involves language that may carry legal exposure, the reviewing supervisor has discretion to reclassify using the approved alternative language matrix. He looks up. The approved alternative language matrix, he says. He sets the paper down. Your company built a tool for changing the words passengers use to describe what happened to them. He looks at each face around the table. You called complaint reduction a protocol. You turned discrimination into service preference. You turned improper removal into voluntary rebooking. He looks at Patricia Owens. And who protected the passengers? Patricia Owens does not answer. Vivian Cross is reading the emails. Her face has lost the careful, composed neutrality she brought into this room. What is replacing it is not anger, something older and more serious than anger. The expression of a person discovering that the institution they lead has been doing something quietly for a long time that they would never have authorized if they had known. How far back does this go? She asks. Carol says quietly, further than I know about. Vivian closes the emails. She places them carefully on the table in front of her, aligned with the edge, the gesture of a person organizing what they are going to do next. She looks at the communications director. Tear up the draft. The communications director looks up. Write this: Northstar Airways acknowledges that on Tuesday morning aboard Flight 614, a passenger with a valid first-class ticket was subjected to a removal process that was influenced by another passenger's preference rather than any legitimate safety or conduct concern. We acknowledge that this reflects a failure not only of one crew's judgment, but of the internal processes that should have prevented it. An independent review is underway. We will not call this an isolated incident because the evidence we are reviewing does not support that characterization. The room is silent. The corporate attorney beside the communications director speaks quietly. Vivian. No more soft language, Vivian says. Not today, not in this room. She looks at Marcus. What do you need from us to complete the review? Preservation of all complaint records for the last 5 years, Marcus says. An independent channel for current employees to report without risk of reclassification. No public statement that uses the word isolated. And a direct personal communication to each of the 31 individuals in my files. Not a form letter, not a voucher. A call. A human being on the other end of the line saying, "We saw what you reported. We believe you. We are sorry." Vivian nods. One clean nod. No qualification. Done, she says. Marcus asks to speak to Robert Hastings and Diana Price separately before they leave the building. Vivian arranges it. One at a time. The same conference room now emptied of its other occupants. Robert enters first. He no longer has his badge or radio. Their absence changes his silhouette in a way that is difficult to explain but immediately legible. He looks like a man who has been carrying something for a long time and has had it taken away and does not yet know what to do with his hands. He sits across from Marcus. He does not look at him directly at first. He looks at the table. I want you to know Robert says that I was following what I understood to be standard procedure for Robert, Marcus says. Robert looks up. I have been doing this for 40 years. I know the difference between a person who followed a bad procedure and a person who used procedure to protect a bad decision. You are the second thing. Robert's jaw tightens. You made a decision in 3 seconds, Marcus says, before you asked a single question. You looked at Mrs. Voss and then at the man in 2A, and you decided which one of them was the problem. And then you spent the next 30 minutes finding the language to justify that decision after it was already made. Robert says nothing. That is not procedure, Marcus says. That is a choice. A long pause. I was trying to keep the flight on schedule, Robert says. I know, Marcus says. That is the most troubling thing about this morning. You were not cruel. You were efficient. You found the path of least resistance and you followed it without asking who was paying the price. Robert looks at his hands. You taught every employee in that cabin something today, Marcus says. You taught them that removing a quiet black man is a faster solution than inconveniencing a loud white woman. That lesson will be repeated, in smaller, quieter ways, by every person who watched you do it long after today's events have become a compliance case study. Robert closes his eyes. What happens now? He asks. The investigation will determine what happens professionally, Marcus says. But that is not the question I am interested in. Robert looks up. The question I am interested in is what you do with what you know now. About yourself. About the decision you made this morning. Robert sits with this for a long time. He does not have an answer. But the fact that he does not reach for a quick one, that he sits with the question instead of deflecting it, is the most honest thing he has done all day. He nods once slowly and stands. Marcus watches him go. Diana arrives 12 minutes later. She is not in uniform. She is wearing the same clothes she boarded in, and she looks both exactly the same and entirely different. Same face, same posture, but the professional armor has been fully removed, and what is underneath is a woman in her mid-40s who has spent the last 2 hours sitting with something uncomfortable and has decided not to run from it. She sits down. She does not speak immediately. Marcus waits. He has learned over 40 years that the most important things people say arrive in the silence before they are ready. I keep going back to the same moment, Diana says. Which moment? When I took his pass the first time. Before she said anything, she is looking at the table. I looked at the seat number. I looked at him. I looked at the seat number again. She is quiet. I knew it was valid. I knew it before she said a word. Marcus says nothing. And then she said it. Diana continues, and something shifted. It became easier to believe that there might be an error than to believe that there was no error and she was just wrong. She looks at Marcus. I think I wanted there to be an error. Because if there was an error, I did not have to make a hard choice. I could just manage it. Marcus looks at her for a long moment. You have said something very few people would say out loud, he tells her. I have been thinking it for 2 hours. That is where honesty usually starts. 2 hours after the moment when it was needed, Diana gives a short, quiet breath. What do I do now? Marcus leans forward slightly. There will be a review process that determines what happens to your employment. I cannot speak to that. But separate from that process, separate from consequences, you have a choice about what this morning means. He looks at her. You can treat it as the worst thing that happened to your career, or you can treat it as the moment you understood something about yourself that you did not know before. Both are true. Only one of them is useful. Diana is quiet. I want to do something with it, she says. I do not know what yet. Start with this, Marcus says. The next time you are standing in an aisle with a boarding pass in your hand and someone nearby has a preference about who should be sitting where, stop for 1 second before you move. Ask yourself, what do I actually know? Not what does this person's confidence suggest, what do I actually know? Diana nods. Slowly at first, then more certain. That is it, she says. That is everything Marcus says. She stands. She picks up her bag. She pauses at the door. I hope someday I can show you that I learned something today, she says. Not just that I lost something. Marcus looks at her. You already have, he says. What you said in this room is more honest than anything I have heard from a person in your position in a very long time. Diana opens the door. She leaves without looking back. Not because she is dismissing what happened, but because she is already looking forward. 6 months later, Marcus Ellison arrives at Gate 22 of Washington National Airport with the same worn briefcase. The tape on the handle has been replaced. Not because someone repaired it, but because it finally wore through entirely, and Marcus put new tape on himself the same way he has been doing since the original stitching gave way 3 years ago. The leather is the same amber-faded brown. The corners are the same worn soft roundness of something that has been carried a very long time. He is early. He is always early. He buys a coffee from the terminal cart and stands near the gate window watching the ground crews move in the cold, early morning light, and thinks about nothing in particular, which is the closest thing to rest he has found in the last 6 months. The review is complete. 31 complaints reviewed independently, verified, and individually addressed. 31 phone calls made by a Northstar executive, not a form letter, not a voucher, not a customer service representative reading from a script. A human being saying, we saw what you reported, we believe you, we should have done this sooner. The complaint reclassification process has been dismantled and a new one built in its place, with an external oversight panel that includes passenger advocates, civil rights representatives, and at Marcus's recommendation, 2 former complainants who agreed to serve. Marcus stands at the gate window and drinks his coffee and lets the morning be ordinary for a moment, which is a thing he is learning to do. You picked my flight. Carol Penna is behind him. She is in her Northstar uniform. New title, same steady presence, the bearing of someone who has been doing difficult things quietly for 31 years and has finally been given the room to do them openly. Marcus turns. I heard you were promoted, he says. Director of Cabin Standards. Carol makes a face that is somewhere between pride and exasperation. Mostly it means I spend my time reminding people that respect is not optional even when the flight is delayed and the passenger in 4B has complained 4 times about the temperature. That may be the most important job in the building. My predecessor called it the most thankless. I prefer to think of it as the most necessary. She looks at him the way a person looks at someone who changed the trajectory of their professional life in a way they did not anticipate and are still processing. The complaint files, she says. What happened with them, they became the foundation of the new passenger rights framework, Marcus says. Your original, the one you kept, is cited in the policy documentation as a case study in what reclassification looks like and why it matters. Carol is quiet for a moment. I kept it because I did not want it to disappear entirely, she says. I did not know it would become useful. Things we preserve in case they matter usually do, Marcus says. Inside the cabin, the first surprise, Frank Okafor in 2B. He is already seated when Marcus boards, reading a novel with the page turned nearly to the end, the posture of a man who is almost done with one thing and not yet started on the next. He looks up when Marcus appears in the aisle, and the grin that crosses his face is the unforced grin of a man who does not waste smiles on things that do not deserve them. "Well," Frank says. Marcus laughs. It is a full laugh, the kind that arrives when something is genuinely funny and there is nothing preventing it. "Under better circumstances," Marcus says. "Considerably." Frank marks his page and closes the book. "I was starting to think this airline invited me specifically to make a point." "Did they?" "Vivian called me 3 months ago," Frank says, "asked if I would be willing to speak to the new crew training cohort about what happened, my perspective as a passenger." Marcus sits down in 2A. "Did you know?" "Twice," Frank says. "Once in person, once by video for the Denver training program." He is quiet for a moment. "I told them what I told you. A man's character is not measured when doing right is easy." "How did they receive it?" A young woman in the second session, she could not have been more than 25, she raised her hand afterward and said, "How do you know when doing right is actually costing you something? Sometimes I think I am being brave, and later I realize I just was not paying attention to the risk." Marcus looks at him. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that was the most honest thing I had heard a new employee say in either session, and that the willingness to ask that question was more valuable than the answer." He pauses. "She reminded me of Sophia." The second surprise, Sophia Reyes enters the cabin 3 rows behind Frank and stops in the aisle with the expression of a person who has walked into a coincidence so precise it stops feeling like one. "You have to be kidding me," she says. "I did not know you were on this flight," Marcus says. "I am covering a transportation equity conference in Los Angeles." She looks from Marcus to Frank and back to Marcus. "This cannot be accidental." Frank pleasantly. "Life is full of mystery." Sophia sits down in 3C, the same seat as 6 months ago, and sets her camera bag under the seat in front of her with the practiced efficiency of someone who has been in and out of more airports in the last 6 months than she planned. Her documentary, which she began 3 months after the incident, built around 10 ordinary passengers who had been removed, rerouted, or denied service without explanation or recourse, premiered online 2 weeks ago. It has been viewed 4 million times. It is being considered for wider distribution. Sophia has turned down 3 offers for book deals because she is not done yet with the story she is inside. "How are you?" Marcus asks. "Busy," she says. "Good." Still figuring out what journalism looks like when the story you are covering changes the thing you are trying to cover. That is usually how it goes when you get it right. Sophia smiles. It is a real one. Carol Penna reappears at the cabin door before the aircraft door closes. She walks down the aisle and stops beside seat 2A. She has someone with her, a woman in her mid-40s wearing civilian clothes and a visitor badge. Her posture is different from 6 months ago, softer in some places, more deliberate in others. Her eyes have the look of a person who has been doing difficult internal work and is not yet finished but has stopped pretending she has not started. "Diana Price. I hoped you might agree to speak with me," she says. Marcus looks at her. "Sit down," he says. She sits in the empty seat across the aisle and places a folder on her tray table. Inside, new bias awareness training materials, real case studies stripped of identifying details but structurally intact, the actual anatomy of what happened, not the sanitized summary. Discussion questions, scenario exercises built not from hypotheticals, but from incidents like the one on Flight 614, treated as learning material rather than institutional embarrassment. The first page has 1 sentence in large type. Never ask whether someone belongs, only whether their ticket does. Marcus reads it. A quiet smile. That is a better beginning than most training materials start with, he says. Diana looks at her hands. I told them to use my name, she says, in the case study, not anonymized. A pause. My supervisor said I did not have to. I said I did. Marcus looks at her. If I hide what I did, Diana says, someone else will repeat it thinking it is available to them, that it is a choice they can make and survive. And you did not want to give them that. I did not want to give anyone that. Marcus holds the folder for a moment. Diana, he says. She looks at him. You walked back in here. That matters. She nods. Once. The nod of a person who is not looking for absolution, but is learning to live with what they did and build something from it. Go do the work, Marcus says. She stands, she picks up her bag, she walks off the aircraft with her head up, wearing her visitor badge, carrying the folder. Carol watches her go. She has been volunteering with the training program since January, Carol says. 3 sessions a week. Marcus nods. Good, he says. The boarding door closes. The engines begin. The aircraft pushes back from gate 22 at 7:51 a.m. Marcus settles into seat 2A the way a person settles into something familiar. Not comfortably exactly, but truly. He opens his briefcase. He removes the legal pad he has been keeping since the day he was retained by Northstar Airways. He turns to the last page with writing on it. He reads the final entry from 6 months ago, written in the margins of Complaint File 14 at 35,000 feet over Missouri. Do not let this become a report. Keep it a story. He turns to a new page. He caps the pen. He looks out the window instead. The runway extends ahead of the aircraft into the pale early light, and beyond it the city of Washington, D.C. rises and flattens and rises again in the distance. Monuments, buildings, streets, the ordinary grid of a place where a very large number of consequential things happen every morning, in rooms that most people never see. At gate 18 across the terminal, a young man boards a different Northstar flight. He is 26 years old. He is wearing a faded jacket and carrying a backpack that has been through several airports and shows it. He works in logistics, a job he took 3 years ago when he needed anything, and has kept because he is good at it, and because his manager sees him clearly, and that is, he has learned not a small thing. He has never flown first class before. His company booked the ticket. He checked 3 times to make sure it was right. At the gate, when the agent called his boarding group, he approached the desk and waited for someone to tell him there had been a mistake. No one did. He boards. He walks down the jet bridge in the particular way a person walks when they are trying not to draw attention to themselves. Slightly too careful. Slightly too quiet. Slightly too aware of the space they are occupying. He finds his row. He opens the overhead bin. He puts his backpack in. The flight attendant, young, attentive, trained in the last 3 months under Carol Penna's revised approach, appears at his elbow. "Let me help you with that," she says, "and welcome aboard. Can I get you something while we finish boarding?" The young man looks at her. She is looking back at him the way the new training teaches, like every passenger who sits in a seat belongs in the seat they are sitting in until something factual demonstrates otherwise, and if you are doing your job right, that demonstration will never come. "Water would be great," he says. "Coming right up." She smiles, not performed, not positioned, just a person doing her job well. It is a good morning to fly. He sits down. He adjusts his seatbelt. He looks around the first-class cabin. The wider seats, the cleaner air, the soft light of a cabin designed for a different version of travel than the one he is used to. No one looks at him. No one stares. No one assesses. He is just a person in a seat. He exhales. It is a small moment. It will not trend. It will not be filmed or posted or turned into a statement by a corporate communications director. It will not appear in any report or legal document or policy framework. But it is the moment Marcus has been working toward for 40 years. Not the fired manager, not the viral video, not the boardroom and the corrected complaint files and the independent oversight panel and the sentences that Vivian Cross said out loud in the cabin of Flight 614 without a publicist in the room. This young man in this seat exhaling. The evidence that something changed in a way that outlasted the headlines. Marcus watches the runway accelerate beneath the aircraft. He is not watching the young man at gate 18. He does not know about him. He will not know about him until Carol tells him months later that something has shifted in the way her crews approach boarding. Something small and hard to measure, but visible to someone paying attention. the way they look at passengers, the moment of actual seeing before assumption, before calculation, before the old shortcuts. Marcus does not know any of that yet. He knows the runway and the morning light and the worn leather briefcase at his feet and the legal pad with the capped pen and the sentence he wrote over Missouri 6 months ago. Keep it a story. The aircraft lifts. Below Washington grows small and then smaller and then becomes the geometry of something you can hold in your field of vision all at once. The city, the river, the monuments, the streets where people are beginning their Tuesday. Frank Okafor in 2B looks out at it. Not a bad view, he says. No, Marcus agrees. A pause. The kind that happens between people who have shared something that does not need to be named every time it is referenced. What are you working on next? Frank asks. Marcus looks out the window. Transportation sector. Different industry. Similar pattern. Same story. The details change, Marcus says. The geometry does not. Frank nods slowly. Does it ever feel like you are running behind it? Like the pattern moves faster than you can document it? Marcus is quiet for a moment. Yes, he says. He looks at his briefcase. But I have been doing this long enough to know that documentation accumulates. That the file that does not matter today is the evidence that changes things in 3 years. That the passenger who complains and hears nothing back and thinks nothing came of it, sometimes something did come of it, just slowly, just quietly, the way most things that actually last come of themselves. He looks at Frank. We do not always get to see the result of what we preserve. Frank looks out the window. But we preserve it anyway, he says. We preserve it anyway. Robert Hastings was terminated 6 weeks after the independent review confirmed that he had approved at least 9 improper passenger removals over 4 years and had repeatedly coached employees to resolve complaints in favor of premium status passengers, regardless of the facts. Pamela Voss received an 18-month ban from Northstar Flights. She sent Marcus a handwritten letter, not processed by a publicist, not managed by a lawyer, in which she said plainly that she had looked at him and decided he did not belong, and that she was still working to understand how that decision had arrived so quickly and felt so certain. Marcus read the letter, once placed it in his briefcase, and wrote back 3 weeks later. An apology cannot erase the moment, but honest change can prevent the next one. Start with the next person whose presence surprises you, and ask yourself why. Derek Voss reopened the warehouse injury case through his company's ethics board, corrected the falsified incident report, and established a safety compensation fund in the injured employee's name. He did not publicize any of this. He has not spoken to Pamela since the flight. What changed at Northstar was not only what the reports documented. The reports documented what was measurable: complaint resolution times removal incidents, employee reporting frequency. What the reports could not document was the change in a crew of 25 people who sat through the first all-hands training built around what happened on Flight 614 and left that training quieter than they entered it, carrying something they had not carried before. It could not document the new gate agent in Chicago who slowed down the entire boarding line to help an elderly man find his identification and received no complaint about the delay because the supervisor standing nearby had decided recently that this was exactly the kind of delay worth having. It could not document the moment, repeated small and visible to anyone not paying close attention, when a flight attendant chose for 1 second to actually look at the person in front of her before she decided anything about them. Power can expose injustice. Marcus has always known this. He has used it deliberately for 4 decades in every form available to him: legal authority, documentation, institutional leverage, the weight of a credential presented at the right moment. But power can only expose what is already there, and it can only do so once. The harder work, the work that happens in the absence of cameras and investigations and viral videos and CEOs walking through aircraft doors, is the work of character. It is the choice a person makes in an aisle when no one of consequence is watching. It is the moment between assumption and action, the pause that Diana Price did not take in the first seconds and took finally in a conference room in Los Angeles and has been practicing every day since. Everyone on that plane deserved to be treated as exactly what they were: a person who bought a ticket and sat in a seat and was on their way somewhere that mattered to them. Not a profile, not a question, not a mistake waiting to be corrected, simply a passenger. Nothing less, and everything that word should mean. Equal in the window light of a morning departure. Equal in the ordinary dignity of going somewhere. Equal in the simple, undeniable fact of being there. If this story moved you, if you have ever sat very still in a seat that was yours and waited for the world to catch up to that fact, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. If you believe that dignity should never depend on a title, a credential, or who you turn out to be, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Every share, every comment, every person who passes this story along is part of the reason stories like this one do not stay buried. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.